Go inside the Crimson Tide. Tider Insider TV with Rodney Orr and Gary Harris.
Beating Alabama is just a gift that keeps on giving for Ole Miss. In fact, the entire state of Mississippi. They're getting the pub. Here's the latest issue of Sports Illustrated. The cover, Mississippi mayhem indeed. Alabama falls to Ole Miss, and Mississippi State takes down Texas A&M. And for the first time, both Mississippi State schools are in the top 5.
Wow.
What's happening?
That's history.
If you ever thought college football had been turned topsy-turvy, there's your proof, Rod. That's all you need to know right there, but give them credit. Both those schools doing very well. Good evening, everybody, and welcome in to Tider Insider TV, presented each and every week by Buffalo Rock. Alongside Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com, I'm Gary Harris. Once again tonight, ice cold Pepsi next. Of all the great Pepsi products, this is my favorite because it's all the great Pepsi taste, 2/3 less calories, only 60 calories per 12-ounce can. You get the flavor, you don't get all the sugar. And it tastes awesome, especially on a day like today when I've been running. It's been hot outside.
Yeah. I was just talking to one of the interns. He went to the Notre Dame-Stanford game this weekend, said it was
Freezing.
30 degrees.
Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that? Well, Rodney, that's a big game, but nothing bigger in these parts than Ole Miss knocking off Alabama 23-17 on Saturday at Vaught-Hemingway Stadium. Let's break it down. Rod, this is a painful loss. All losses are painful. But I gave you the stat. Going into the Auburn game last year, Alabama had been 38-2 over its previous 40 games. Now they're 4-3 their last 7. But this is another one of those games where, you know, Ole Miss won the game. I don't want to take anything away from them. The team that deserves to win usually is the one that wins. But Alabama, again, penalties, turnovers, had a chance to close it out in the fourth quarter, a little bit like the Auburn game. Not in the way that it was played, but in the outcome, in the sense that Alabama just could not put them away. And when Ole Miss grabbed the momentum, they seized it, and they went out and won the game.
Well, you remember last week when I made my pick, I said if Alabama doesn't turn the ball over and make costly mistakes, they'll win the game, and they would have. I mean, you look at the end of the game when Ole Miss tied it up. Alabama fumbles the kickoff return, sets Ole Miss up for the lead. Then when Ole Miss kicks off again, Alabama has a block in the back. Instead of starting at the 35, Alabama starts at the 13, has to drive all the way downfield. They get a first down with 44 seconds left at the Ole Miss 18, but there's a holding call, another mistake. Then the Blake Sims throw into the end zone to O.J. Howard, another mistake, an interception. That's the way the game ended. So turnovers, mistakes, there's no question they killed Alabama.
I know you see 88, O.J. Howard, a talented player, but he has been mistake prone. Okay, here's Nick Saban talking about what happened in Oxford.
We're 2nd and 2. I mean, in great shape to score and win the game at the end, get a holding penalty that puts us in a long yardage situation after we got a first down. So, and we throw an interception. So the last 2 possessions we turned the ball over. So got to take advantage of opportunities when you have them, and you know it's hard to overcome penalties, turnovers, missed executions on defense, and they took advantage of it.
All right, Rod, I want you and I to break it down for the viewers, kind of like we did on the phone earlier this week. Yeah. We went in depth, and I mentioned O.J. Howard. He's a talented player. I mean, I love the kid. He's 6'6", 240, can run. But you mentioned his holding call. He had one against Auburn, similar situation, knocked out a first down. He had one this past week. On that final throw, he didn't really make an attempt to play defense in that situation. Yeah, Blake Sims maybe shouldn't have thrown it, but this seems to be, we're 5 games in now this season. This seems to be a team that is mistake prone. They're -4 in turnovers. They're one of the most penalized teams in the Southeastern Conference. That's not what we've come to expect from Nick Saban coach football teams. And I know you say you're going to try to correct it, but you're 5 games in. Could it be that doesn't mean they're not a good team, but that's just the nature of this football team? They're going to make some mistakes, pre-snap and post-snap.
Yeah, well, it sure looks like it. And I mean, you know, again, all they can do is continue to work on it, Gary. You know, you go into the thing about it is we kind of overlooked the mistakes a little bit when, again, in the Florida game because of the victory. You know, 42-21, Alabama was very impressive, almost puts up 700 yards. But we said, hey, if those mistakes continue in a close game, it can come back and bite you. You go on the road, you're playing a tough Ole Miss team that has a really outstanding defense, and you know, it happened. You give them opportunities. You don't put them away when you don't finish drives. You know, you drive down and you have to settle for field goals that you miss, and then you turn the ball over like this right here coming up. You know, you just kill yourself.
I'm glad you mentioned the field goals, and we're looking at the fumble, the crucial fumble, costly fumble by Kristen Jones. And I know Griffith early in the year looked strong, but again, it was windy in Oxford, but he's 1 for 3. He missed one against Florida. Coverage was not good. Kickoffs weren't great. The fumble, special teams quite frankly, right now, is a liability for this football team.
Yep. Yep.
Other than J.K. Scott, who's punted the heck out of the football.
When you're talking about a guy who certainly was the MVP, J.K. Scott might have kept Alabama in the game with field position the way he punted the ball. So certainly, that was a plus, Gary. But as you mentioned, they continue the opening kickoff. The way the wind was, they had a guy hold the ball, and Adam Griffith didn't get a good kick on it. And Ole Miss got a great return. It gives them a lot of momentum, sets up a field goal. So, it just really bit them.
And the penalties. They're getting the mental penalties, which are illegal procedures, delay of games. They're getting physical penalties, holdings, and illegal blocks, things like that. It's a combination.
And some of that, though, to be honest with you, the delay of games and the potential delay of games and having to use timeouts instead of getting to delay a game had to do with Bradley Bozeman coming in the game. He had no experience. I mean, Austin Shepard today said that's a very extremely difficult situation, to put a kid in who's never played, a redshirt freshman, and he's thrown in there in that environment and all that noise, and, he certainly doesn't want to make a mistake.
Another thing about Nick Saban teams, for the most part, they haven't had a lot of injuries.
Yeah.
That's another thing. In this game alone, you lose Kenyon Drake, who's one of your most explosive playmakers for the season. You lose Denzel Duvall, outside linebacker, for several weeks with a high ankle sprain, and then Ryan Kelly, the center you mentioned. Let's talk about Drake. I know he doesn't play as much as a lot of people would like, but he brings something to the table, quite frankly, that no other player on this team has, and that's playmaking ability from the backfield, from the slot, and as an outside receiver.
He can do it all, Gary. He's explosive. He can take it the distance on any play. There's no question about that. He adds some speed to the Alabama offense, as you mentioned. He's just a valuable weapon. He's been compared in some ways to Reggie Bush, and certainly he brings that kind of versatility and talent, and he's certainly going to be missed.
His teammates reflected on Monday on what they'll miss from Drake on the football field.
A loss like that with Kenyon Drake, it hurts our offense. But we just got to find some guys who can play his spot, do all the different things he did.
I saw him yesterday morning, and he looks good. He's in high spirits, and we have to use that kind of thing to propel us and use it as motivation for doing our best.
Here's a look at what Bama's missing. You see only 27 touches that accounted for 271 yards. That's 10 yards per touch. 6 touchdowns, 1 touchdown every 4 touches. Rodney, that's a lot of offensive production. Yeah, he made the most of his opportunities. Another huge injury that I've already alluded to, the quarterback of the offensive line, if you will, center Ryan Kelly. You talk about the quarterback and all that he's got to do. Think about the center. Protections, pre-snap reads, helping the quarterback. As you said, they've got to be on the same page. Bozeman did a pretty good job under the circumstances. He's got a week now to get ready, but still, Ryan Kelly, another huge loss. If it's 2 weeks, 3 weeks, if it's just one game, it's a big loss.
It really is. Now you're going on the road again, very hostile, much similar environment to what you were in this past week at Arkansas. And believe me, they're extremely loud there, especially when they start calling the Hogs. And you're putting a young center out there that's never really played much, and it's going to be a difficult situation for him.
And Denzel Duvall, one of your starting outside linebackers, he's gone as well.
Yeah. I don't want to say the good thing about it, but Alabama does have some players that can step up. They have a lot of young players, a lot of talented young players that are going to have to step up at that linebacker spot and, do some things.
He'll be out several weeks. High ankle sprain. It did require surgery. All right, much more to come on this edition of Tider Insider Television. We'll take your calls in just a little bit. But up next, we dive into this week's opponent. The Arkansas Razorbacks are a comer. Brett Bielema's team had a bye week. They're 0-10 under Bielema in the SEC, but they're going to beat somebody. Tide fans hope it isn't the Tide. How do we stack up against the Hogs? We'll discuss it after the break. And coming up, well, as I said, we'll be welcoming your phone calls, 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. Email us, TITV@WVUATV.com, or reach out to us on Twitter, #TiderInsiderTV. We'll be back with the show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide, the award-winning Tider Insider TV. Stay with us. Welcome back to TITV. It was another solid Sunday for former Crimson Tide players in the NFL. Julio Jones had that nice one-handed grab. Man, he's playing some football. Unfortunately, the Falcons just don't look very good right now. Watch it again. Go get it, fella, with a left hand. He wound up with 11 catches for the Falcons in a losing effort against the Giants. Here are some other standouts from Week 5 of the NFL. Julio Jones, one of the top receivers in the league. Eddie Lacy, he did all that on only 13 carries, Rodney.
Yeah.
Also caught 3 balls for 27 yards, so he's getting on track. He's a lot better when they put the quarterback under center. He says it. Hey, I don't like getting handoffs from the shotgun. C.J. Mosley, 15 tackles, officially 8 solo. Harbaugh actually said on Monday after reviewing the film they had him for 18 tackles.
That's incredible.
He's missed, didn't he?
I'm telling you, he's missed.
And Marcel Darius, look at that, 5 tackles, 3 sacks, 2 tackles for loss. As the Bills beat the Lions, their defensive coordinator, Jim Schwartz, used to be the head coach of Detroit. That was pretty sweet for Buffalo. All right, 104-0. What's that mean to you?
104-0?
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's the score of the last 2 Alabama-Arkansas games combined.
Okay.
52-zip, 52-zip.
I bet you that doesn't happen this time.
Yeah, well, that's the last 2 years. This year, Brett Bielema's team is considered to be one of the most improved, not just in the SEC, but in the country. Now, the bottom line is, Rodney, they're 3-2, but they're 0-2 in the SEC. They played Auburn even for a half, 21-21, and then, quite frankly, you know, give A&M credit, but Arkansas controlled that game 28-14 in the fourth quarter for most of the game before losing in overtime. As I said earlier, they're going to beat somebody.
Yep, that game kind of got away from them against Texas A&M. I mean, they could have been up, like you mentioned, 35-14, but Texas A&M came back won. They're a physical football team, Gary. They line up, they run the football. We knew that's what Brett Bielema liked to do. We knew it from Wisconsin, his Big Ten days, and you know, he's got some standout running backs, and it's going to be a lot different than what Alabama's seen so far.
In fact, Rod, you know how I feel about it. I'm an old school guy. You know, Washington State losing to Cal 60-59. They missed a 19-yard field goal, so you score 59 points and get beat. I'm sorry, I'm just not football. But while everybody's trying to spread you out, Arkansas is just lining up with 2 tight ends and knocking you in the teeth. Nick Saban talked about in this day and age how difficult that kind of attack is to prepare for defensively.
I never thought that I would be here as a coach in my lifetime, that running regular I formation plays and running the ball out of regular 2 wide receivers, 2 backs in the backfield would be the anomaly. Back to the Future is really kind of a good way to say it. I mean, this is really old-fashioned, hard-nosed, you know, Bo Schembechler, Woody Hayes kind of football.
We've already talked quite a bit about it, but that is what it is. The good news is Alabama can play against these type of teams a lot better than a lot of other defenses can.
Yeah, I think Alabama's built that way, you know, with their physical style and the things that they do. So I think that, you know, Alabama matches up pretty well, but let's be honest now. Arkansas really brings it, Gary, and you mentioned they're a team that's kind of due for a big win. It's going to be a tough game, I think, for Alabama right now because Arkansas is still kind of reeling after this game. We'll see how Alabama rebounds.
And coming off a bye, we'll have our predictions on this big game later in the show. Well, more to come on TI-TV, including the Alabama basketball team. Kind of quietly, they started practice this past weekend. Well, when you start on the day that Alabama's playing Ole Miss in football, not a lot of people paying attention, quite honestly. We'll hear from Coach Anthony Grant. And next, we're welcoming your phone calls, emails, and tweets. Again, you see the information on the screen on how you can get in touch with us. We love to hear from you, and we're going to take some phone calls and more right after this. Well, you know, Anthony Grant's kind of a low-key guy. He likes doing things in a low-key fashion. He got his wish this past Saturday because he opened practice, and I don't know that anybody even knew that. But Alabama basketball coming off a disappointing 13-19 campaign. They're looking to improve, and you know, Coach Grant and Levi Randolph think they can do that.
It's been a really good off-season. You know, we had our guys here in the summer for 8 weeks. They got a chance to get used to each other, really, and that's the big thing I think with the summers is them getting to know each other, bonding together.
Well, I think the biggest thing for us this year is just to keep improving, and for us, we expect to compete and to play hard, and we want to be one of the top teams in the SEC and one of the top teams in the country.
Alabama will open the exhibition schedule November 10th against the in-state Montevallo Falcons. All right, let's head to the Med Center hotline, take some phone calls. They're lined up, Rod, and first up is our buddy Joseph in Tuscaloosa. Hey, Joseph, what's up?
Hey, Gary, Rodney, what's happening with y'all?
Don't know, partner. Tell me.
Everything, well, man, everything look a little shady this past Saturday. But I'll tell you what, if we continue to play like that, man, we would be fortunate enough to play for the Liberty Bowl. So that, you know, a game like that would cause a lot of people.
All right, Joseph, let's not overreact now, brother. All right, I know what you're saying. It's a disappointing loss. They played a good team, but I still think Alabama's got a good football team. And granted, you got to go out and prove it every Saturday, but I don't know about the Liberty Bowl. I still think they're going to wind up in a, whether they get in that 14 playoff or not, I don't know, but I still think they're going to wind up in a pretty good bowl game.
Well, you know, again, I think that's one reason why this game this week is very important, because Alabama has a tough schedule as we move forward. You've got Mississippi, you've got the game this week against Arkansas at Arkansas. You come home to play Texas A&M. You've got to go on the road, Gary, to play Tennessee. Then you still have Mississippi State and LSU back-to-back. I mean, those are some tough games. Now, I know LSU's not very good this year, but you still go to Baton Rouge. And so I understand what Joseph's saying. They certainly don't have any room to take anyone lightly.
Well, and I don't think they should. I mean, after losing to Ole Miss for the first time in 10 years, that ought to get your attention. If that doesn't get it, then, you know, maybe Joseph's right. Maybe it's just not that important to him. All right, let's go to Anniston and talk to Larry. Larry, what's going on?
Hey, I want to know why the University of Alabama even let CBS Sports broadcast their game, especially with Gary Danielson and Vern Lundquist being so prejudiced against
All right,
Alabama.
Larry, well, I can tell you, first of all, University of Alabama doesn't make that call. They're part of the Southeastern Conference. They have a say-so in the television contracts, but the SEC has a television contract with CBS for a national game on Saturdays, and the announcers are approved by CBS in the Southeastern Conference, so that's all I can tell you. You may not agree with them calling the games or the way that they do it, but they're the announcers, and they're going to be the announcers for the foreseeable future. So, you know, it's really all I can say.
I don't think they're biased at all, to be honest with you. I really don't. I think Gary Danielson and no offense to Larry, I mean, he's certainly entitled to his opinion. And, you know, Danielson does talk a lot, but he certainly does a great job of breaking the game down.
All right, let's stay in Anniston and talk with Harold. Hey, Harold, what's up?
Hey, how you doing, guys?
Hey, man.
Hey, I saw the press conference with Coach Saban. He looked kind of agitated. Do you think this team is starting to frustrate him? And could you comment on whether or not we have enough leadership on this team?
Harold, I think he's frustrated, sure. I mean, I don't think he likes a team that gets a lot of penalties, turns the football over, can't hold leads in the fourth quarter. I mean, yeah. You know, but the bottom line is he is the head football coach. And standing at a press conference every Monday and saying this is what we need to work on, well, you know, at some point, that's what we're talking about, the personality of this team. It has to show up on Saturday. No coach coaches their team to make mistakes, turn over the ball. I mean, every coach in the country is teaching fundamentals. They're working on ball security. Some teams just make more mistakes than others. So, yeah, I think he's frustrated a little bit.
Let me address the leadership issue. First of all, Harold, think about if Alabama had Ha-Ha Clinton-Dix and Vinny Cincinnati on this football team.
C.J. Mosley.
C.J. Mosley. Think about the but of course, no, C.J. was a senior, but those two guys could have come back.
That's right.
You know, given that they left early. You have those two guys back there in the secondary and the leadership they would provide. I mean, you know, they've just lost a lot of players.
Yeah. But, you know, they're going to keep working at it. That's all you can do. And you just hope that the preparation that you put in during the week shows up on Saturday. More times than not for Alabama, it has. But it is still tough when you lose one. All right, we continue next on Tider Insider TV. We'll give you the details of the next Alabama home game against Texas A&M. And coming up, more of your phone calls, emails, tweets, and, you know, stick around. We'll talk some more to you right after this. Another 2:30 kickoff for the Tide and the Aggies for the third straight year. CBS will put the game on in the #1 spot. That's the next time that Alabama will be back at home at Bryant-Denny Stadium on October the 18th. Let's head right back to the Met Center hotline where phone calls are lining up for us, Rod. Let's get right back to it. On the phone right now is John in Bessemer. Hey, John, what's up?
Gary, Rodney, what's going on, man?
Hey, man.
I'm calling to find out, Drake, will he be back next year? And I wanted to know. I'll tell you, I mean, I feel sorry for Alabama, man. Roll Tide.
All right, John. Yeah, it's a good question. I think there was a good chance that he might have considered going to the NFL draft. Now, how this injury will impact him, it will, no doubt. And he has another year of eligibility. He even has a redshirt year if needed, if the injury turned out to be really, really bad. So, I don't know if we can answer that. Based on what's happened this year, I would think that he might want to come back to college, prove he was healthy, and get ready for the NFL.
Yeah, maybe what he has to do.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it's way too early, John, to make that prediction.
All right, let's go right back to the phones, and we got Bill on the line. Hey, Bill, how are you?
I'm fine, Gary. Harris, how about you?
Very well. Go ahead, Bill.
Gary, what I want to talk about is about the game. It's a lot of, what happened this weekend. We have to, press forward, not worry about what happened to mistakes and stuff like that.
Oh, that's right, BT. You know, Coach Saban said it, win or lose. You know, you got to come back and you got to play the next week. You know, now, the one thing that is a little overrated, in my opinion, I've heard about all these post-game speeches the players gave. And, you know, I've heard about so many of those things. You still got to go out and play the game. You got to prepare during the week and execute. You know, sure, they're disappointed. Sure, they're mad. But if they, as Coach Saban said, you keep making the same mistakes, you're going to get the same outcome.
Yeah, none of that rah-rah stuff works, and certainly Saban does not. That's not really the way he approaches a game. And you know, BT, I think Alabama will put it behind him, but you know, it's a big game, and I think going on the road, it gives Alabama an opportunity to kind of get back in a groove.
All right, real quickly, let's take one more phone call. JW, go ahead, my friend.
I wonder if we're going to change quarterbacks this week.
No, JW, I would be shocked if that happens. I mean, you know, Coach Saban likes to say if the other guys, regardless of position, if the other guys were better, they'd be playing. I don't think Blake Sims cost him the game, and I expect him to be the starting quarterback on Saturday.
Yeah, you certainly can't go with a guy that doesn't have the experience. And Blake Sims, again, he really hasn't done anything to deserve to be replaced.
All right, we're wrapping up the show next. We'll show you what happens when you put yourself in the line of Nick Saban's security. It isn't pretty. Stay with us. Tider Insider TV will return to wrap up the show right after this. It's a beautiful night. Look at that. Rushing the field after a big win looks like a lot of fun until this happens. Ole Miss fans storming the field. One gets too close to Nick Saban, and that trooper says, "Get out of here." The choke slam. Got to stay away from the coach. Cost the Rebels $50,000 for their fans tearing down the goalpost, but hey, something tells me it doesn't bother them. No attempt anymore at keeping people from charging the field when they want it. All right, it's time to make our picks for this week. Let's get right to it. We're short on time.
Well, Alabama going up to Fayetteville. Gary, I picked it 27-20. Came close to picking Arkansas.
Alabama hasn't lost back-to-back games in the SEC under Nick Saban since 2007. I don't think they will. They win 35-24. All right, that is going to do it for the program. Thanks to the Locker Room for outfitting Rodney and I, as always, in original elephant wear. Get by and see them on the University Strip. It's time for dinner. We're headed to Buddy's Rib and Steak over in Northport. Come out and talk some football with us about 15 minutes from now. We'll see you there. And the Alabama men's golf team wins the Jerry Pate Intercollegiate for the third straight year over in Birmingham. Congratulations to the Tide. Good night, everybody.